recording. Welcome to this call that I have been wanting to do for the last several weeks. I was listening to, you guys know I'm like a podcast obsessive person. I listen to a lot of Brené Brown. I listened to a lot of Rachel Hollis. I was kind of on a Rachel Hollis hiatus for a while, and I've been catching up on some things. And she had a podcast, who knows how long ago. I just happened to listen to it a few weeks ago, and I've been like ruminating on it. And it all has to do with what our thoughts are, where our thoughts can take us, and how we can really be proactive in using what we're thinking about and using it to our advantage instead of letting our thoughts take over and giving us this huge disadvantage in the action that we are not taking. Or, if you are finding yourself feeling stuck or feeling unmotivated or feeling like, man, I just want to do the thing and I'm not doing it, that's what this exercise is for tonight, right? Like that is what this is. So before I get too far into this, I am going to share my screen and go over some things with you guys. I'm sharing my screen simply because I don't want to just like lose track of all of the time in the world. This is how it's been laid out to me. And I know that we have gone over something so similar. But for me, and this is kind of like the podcast perspective that I got out of this, that if you are trying to focus on your actions, we need to back up and go over what our thoughts are. What our thoughts do to lead to what feelings we have will ultimately trigger what action we are taking or the action that we are not taking, right? So I want to go through all of these with you. What circumstances are like actual circumstances that lead to our thoughts that then trigger feelings that we have that lead to us taking action or us not taking action, then giving us either the results that we want or the results that aren't there. So let's go over this in short. Circumstances, basic circumstances, are things that are out of our control. They're straight facts. They are things that in a court of law would be held up, such as, what's today's date? At 7:07 on August 12th, it was raining in St. Charles, Missouri. Straight fact, right? Like there's not a judging score. There's nothing. Like it is actually something that happened. Circumstances would also be that yesterday was Wednesday. It happened in the past, happened yesterday. Everything that has already happened is a circumstance. And they're always neutral, right? There's no feelings attached to it. There's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a straight fact. What will happen then is sometimes when we think about like what our circumstances are, when you think something bad about it, or like, oh, like if you're nervous about something, that's a thought that you're having, right? Like that's not a circumstance. If you have to be at work at 8:30 on Monday morning and you're stressing out about it, your circumstance is that you have to be at work at 8:30, but you are deciding how you feel about showing up at 8:30, right? That's your thought that leads to your feelings. So taking that into the equation, thoughts are the things that we come up with. And unlike facts, they can change. You guys, we have something like 60,000 thoughts in our head every single day. Believe me, I feel like I do. Like, I feel like sometimes, this is what happens when you work from home. I'm like saying my thoughts out loud. I'm like talking to myself. But we have so many thoughts and so many of them are negative. So many of them are negative, but they are a choice, right? It's a choice for me to say like, oh my gosh, it's raining outside right now, instead of like, ooh, it's raining. Yay, because then my flowers get their water that they need because I haven't watered them in 3 days. It's fine, right? It's us deciding that that's how we're thinking about it, right? That's us deciding that, man, I have to be at work at 8:30. That was my decision. I accepted the job. These are the responsibilities that come with me showing up at work. So can I really complain about being there? I don't know. We can control what we think to a point. It's so easy to let those thoughts go on autopilot. Like, listen, I'm looking at a bunch of females, so I know I can say this. I'm pretty sure the only people watching this video back will be females. Like, think about the thoughts you have when you're PMSing and how like destructive they can be. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. For me, like it is a hormonal thing when we are going through different phases of our menstrual cycle. And there is a phase that we are hyper focused on things. And that's when we're PMSing, right? So when we are hyper focused on ourselves in the moment and our hormones are making us these like raging, bloated, acne covered individuals, our thoughts are usually not that great. But what if we like had that rational thought of like, man, this is just that time of the month. It happens every time. I need to like simmer the F down and remember that next week I will not be 3 extra pounds. I will not have this ginormous zit on my cheek. Like, I understand that, right? Our mindset and our perspective are shaped by the past. And sometimes it takes a lot of work to get past that, right? Like a lot of times when we come up on a situation, you see people, maybe you lost your job or you got laid off. Last year when, the world changed a lot, our living situation changed a lot, my income got cut in half. And as stressful as that was, I had to choose not to be so stressed that my income got cut in half and choose to think, well, maybe this is an opportunity for me to leave my full-time job and do something else because now I have the time. It's choosing not necessarily to look at the bright side, it's choosing to think about it in a different way and being so conscious of it instead of letting it go on autopilot and then letting it spill out. Because what happens when we say, right, when we have 60,000 thoughts a day and then we're surrounded by other people who have 60,000 thoughts a day and they're also negative, what happens a lot, right? Like our thoughts that we are having that are negative, we say out loud and then they're affirmed by people that we're surrounded with, like, oh man, yeah, that sucks. Oh, it's the worst, right? Like it can just spin into this like terrible thing that I don't want. I don't have the energy for it. It doesn't do anybody any good. But that is the reason it's so, so important to work on our mindset, to dive into personal development. If you are not on my team and you are watching this back as an outsider, we are so, so huge on personal development, mostly because of all of this, because we are people that function at a really high work intensity. And to function at a high work intensity, I need to make sure I have my head together, right? I want to make sure the things I'm thinking are going to move me in the direction I want. And they're not going to like keep me in like a puddle on the floor when I don't want to be that person. It takes work. But then our thoughts are what trigger our feelings, right? And understanding that our thoughts cause our feelings gives us the opportunity to know how to better them without changing our circumstances, right? Think about that. When you are sad, right? Or you're happy, you're joyful, you're depressed, you're excited, you're anxious. Those are feelings, right? Feelings should be described in one word. But a lot of times, the feelings that we have are caused by our thoughts, right? I'm gonna let somebody in here. Oops. The feelings that we have aren't caused by our circumstances. We get to choose how we feel sometimes. And yes, sometimes there are things that are out of our control because, like a fact, maybe we lose somebody or, the thoughts that we have about it make us sad. Clearly, right? But when there are things that are out of our control, and then we are thinking about things in a way that we can feel differently about it, why would we not want to choose that? So think about this, right? When you are thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out, I have so much to do. When you're feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling anxious, where are those thoughts coming from? And what are your circumstances, right? Like when you go back to the basics and you think like, oh, I'm feeling so anxious, when anxiety is really fear of the future, right? It's fear of something that hasn't happened yet. And when you think about where you're at now, what your actual circumstances are, and how how you're thinking about them, that can either trigger you to get anxious about something, to maybe feel prepared about something, to feel excited about something, or best case, just feel neutral about it, right? My 12-year-old stepdaughter was freaking out at dinner tonight because truly like having an anxiety attack because her puppies that were at her mom's house, it's storming and she was freaking out about them, right? Circumstance being it's raining outside, it was storming. Her thoughts immediately going to, oh my gosh, my poor puppies are probably hiding under my bed. And then it immediately leads to this anxiety, right? Where when having a conversation with her, like, all right, girl, like circumstances are, it's storming here. What if we think about that you're not there and your mom's there, probably cuddling with them and like taking care of them, right? Doesn't that make you feel a little better? Just thinking about things slightly differently. It takes work, but that will lead to how you're feeling about something. And then that in turn will lead to the action that you take, right? The actions are what you do, what you don't do, or what you're reacting to, how you're reacting to it. And it is directly reflective of our feelings. So if you're wanting to take action, you're not taking that action, ask yourself what you were feeling before you chose not to take that action. If you were feeling like, I am a self-proclaimed procrastinator, I'm getting better, recovering, right? Recovering procrastinator. But I used to get so frustrated with myself because I would get to the end of the day and be like, oh, I didn't do any of the things I meant to do today. Like I didn't get the laundry done. I didn't do this at work. I didn't, whatever it was. It was the inaction that I was taking because of however I was feeling earlier that day. Maybe I was unmotivated to do whatever it was, but I was unmotivated because I was thinking about something else, or I wasn't thinking about it in a way that I needed to. Think about it like this. I'm watching this show right now called, oh shit, I texted my husband earlier because I couldn't remember what it was. And here I am, still not remembering what it was. I need to. It's called Physical. It's really good, by the way. It's about totally up my alley. It's about this gal who is a housewife. Her husband is, works, I think he was a professor. He's working into politics. And she like secretly has this side gig that she's trying to like put out this fitness video. The thing that caught me though, the most, and this is like, maybe it was a husband thing, or maybe it was somebody didn't deal with it. I dealt with a lot of eating disorder issues in my 20s. I worked through a lot of things in my 20s, eating disorders being one of them. And she's constantly talking to herself. You hear how she's speaking to herself of like, oh, you're so fat. Oh, you can't do this. Oh, you're ugly. Oh, they're all looking at you like, oh, da 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 da. Her thoughts were so bad. It was like making her feel super, super anxious. It was making her feel like she didn't know what she was doing. It was making her feel like I shouldn't even do this. Like I'm just not gonna do it. So when you back up and think, you hear me talk about, if you're on my team, like I talk about affirmations every single day. I write out like a psycho every single day, all of the things that I want to get done today. I write down all of the things I want to get done this week. And I write down how awesome I think I am, like a freaking psycho. I don't even care. But you know why? It's because I'm not going to write down, oh, I'm just not good enough to do this. Oh, I just don't have enough experience. Oh, I just can't because of fill in the blank. Because all that's going to do is bring me down. All it's going to do is me hear myself repeat to myself that I'm just not good enough, right? There is this doctor that was on Brene Brown's podcast, Dr. Grange, and she was talking about how as humans, we have two main fears. Fear number one is death, which is clear, right? Like that's why we're a little cautious with things, right? And after this last year, I think we all know, right? Two biggest fears, death. And the second one is the fear of abandonment, which I think can translate into a lot of things. I think it can translate into a fear of rejection. It can translate into a fear of judgment because we're afraid of doing certain things because we're afraid of how people are going to respond to us and that they're going to leave us. Right? But when you start thinking, instead of thinking like, oh my gosh, if I do this, is this person going to leave? Think, man, if I do this, am I being true to myself? I feel really good about this. This is authentic to me. And you work through those fears of people leaving you because of how you're showing up, because of what you're doing, because you know that you're being you and you trust that. Then your feelings aren't of fear. They aren't of you being afraid to do something or, being shamed into something. You're excited. You're happy about something, right? And then you do the thing. And then you show up and you take action on the thing that you want to do. And those actions are what determine your results. So you can see when you back up, when you're talking shit to yourself and telling yourself that you're terrible and you're not going to do it. And then you just feel down and depressed and not high energy, right? Like whoever has a lot of energy when they're feeling depressed? Nobody on freaking planet Earth. Try doing anything new then. Whereas if you start thinking, I'm fucking awesome. I can do this. I know that I can. You're feeling confident about it. You're feeling like you can do the thing. And then you show up and follow through. Our actions dictate our results, but our actions come from how we're feeling. So if you look back and think like, man, why didn't I do the thing? If you were on our team, we talk a lot about, reaching out to people or having conversations or inviting people to do something with us or make a post on social media or figure out how to do a reel. What were you feeling when you didn't do it? Were you feeling, if you're trying to, for example, we're all adults, like trying to make a reel, it's fucking hard. It's hard. It's confusing. There's a lot of things that go into it. But when you back up and you think like, oh, this makes me feel how? Why is it making you feel that way? What are you thinking? Because I don't know what I'm doing, because I'm trying to figure it out. Whereas if you said, I'm just going to write these steps out and figure it out, you can get it done, right? And when you look back and think, man, I wanted to do this. I wanted to check off these 5 things on my list. When you reflect and go back and look at why they didn't happen, how are you feeling that day? What were you thinking? When you look back on the days that you crushed it, how are you feeling that day? How are you, when people say like, ooh, I felt so motivated. I think motivation is bullshit. I hear a lot of people say that. I'm not the first one. I'm not the new one. I'm not going to be the last one. Motivation comes from within, and it comes from how you are feeling in that moment, right? A lot of times I don't feel motivated to work out until I've pushed play and I'm 5 minutes in my workout and I'm like, all right, I'm already here. I'm doing it clearly. Like I'm almost breaking a sweat, so I'm going to do it. You have to create that feeling. So you see, like, I hear a lot from people that are like, oh, I want to work out. I can't get motivated. The bullshit word, right? Like I can't do that because of how I'm feeling about myself. And maybe you're feeling that way, or maybe they're feeling that way because of history has shown them this is what's happened in the past. And in the past, when they've tried something, these are the results, or the results that they didn't get. But what if this time you paid attention to how you were feeling before you started it? What if this time, before you started the thing, you started really thinking about it and you paid attention to what you were telling yourself before you started? Because if you're telling me, I wish I could, but I can't, I know that you're telling yourself you can't do it. You're telling yourself you're afraid you're going to fail. You're telling yourself you're not good enough. That's what we do, right? We tell ourselves all of those things to talk ourselves out of being hurt, from being abandoned, from being judged by people. And it takes work to back up and say, no, this time I'm doing it because I'm fully capable. because I'm a human, because I have Google and I have YouTube and I can freaking figure it out. And then I'm going to feel good about it. I'm going to feel great on those days that I show up. And then when you take that action, it's just like this cycle, right? Of like, well, now you're going. I use this Melanie Mitro example a lot of how much effort and work it takes to get started. But once you get started, it's easier, right? Because she uses this example of drawing water up from a well of, you're pumping and you're pumping and you're pumping, and it just takes forever. And eventually a little water starts coming out. And you're like, okay, I'm just going to keep pumping and I'm going to keep pumping and I'm going to keep pumping, because now you're like, oh, now I really believe this is going to happen because I can like see it, right? Well, the reason it takes so long to pump the water from the well is because you have to go through all of these things before you get to the water coming out, right? You have to go through your thoughts. You have to go through your feelings. You have to go through the actions for you to get the results of the water coming out. But when you can keep showing up and keep staying in this area of feeling good and taking that action, you're going to continue to see the results that you want. So if you're looking for any kind of equivalent of what motivation is, that's what I think it is. I think it's you controlling your thoughts that lead into your feelings, that make you take the action so that you get the results that you're looking for. And the results are the outcomes or consequences of our action or lack of action. We talk about that a lot, right? Like I've said this the whole time. It's nothing new. But that's the last thing. A lot of times people, when I get on one-on-one calls with my coaches, for example, I hear a lot like, oh, I'm stuck. I can't do this. I didn't do this. Or, I can't figure out why I'm not getting this done. And what most of the time it comes back to? It comes back to personal development, or it comes back to lack of personal development. So while they are so focused on the results that they're not getting, or when I have a challenger of mine that's so focused on they haven't lost the weight, why can't I just lose the weight? But what they're not telling me is maybe their nutrition's off track, or maybe they're kind of sort of doing the workouts and they're not really doing it. Or maybe they had a huge cry sesh before their workout last time because they were so hard on themselves and they couldn't do it. So the results that they are looking for aren't there. This is the only fact. Circumstances are the only fact. Everything else we can control. So how do you move forward? Over and over again. For me, and I think for a lot of people that are aware of their thought processes, I am an emotional being, guys. I have a lot of ups and downs. So I'm really aware, especially about 4 days a month when I'm a total asshole. Slowing down and find the patterns in how you're thinking about things. And I know I used the PMS example before, but that is like a real thing. It makes me feel better about myself when I'm like, oh, okay, that was a hormonal thing. I'm not actually that person anymore. But me thinking about that and like realizing it makes me be less hard on myself, right? And I know that pattern, and it will take time. It is impossible for a thought to come into your head and for you to switch it up immediately. I know that. I know it's impossible to like wake up in the morning and look at yourself and be like, oh, maybe you don't have that feeling. I have that feeling when I look at myself at 5:30. I'm like, oh my God, you're a hot mess. What is happening, right? You can't just be like, you're gorgeous. You're amazing. It takes the work of saying like, get your shit together, Mallory. Don't speak to yourself that way. Like, try again. And you will get there. And maybe it takes you, like me, putting sticky notes up all over your bathroom, being like, you can do this. Do the damn thing. I hear it so often with the negative thoughts, though. I can't do this, or I'm stuck, or I can't break this cycle. So why should I try? I hear that way too often when I'm talking about health and fitness, when I'm talking about people joining my challenge group of I've tried this, I've tried it, I've tried everything. And for whatever reason, they've told themselves over and over and over again, they can't do the thing. But the problem is that they've told themselves they can't do it. And guess what? When you tell yourself you can't do it, you're probably not going to do it. You're not going to do it, which is why I have affirmations that I say every single day. And it's not because when I speak them into the universe it just happens. It's because when I say them out loud and when I write them down, it is a conscious thing that I'm drilling into my head every single day, so that when I have that negative thought, I'm popping up and saying, you're better than this. You know better than this. You do not speak to yourself like this, right? We are so hard on ourselves. When you're feeling those negative feelings, what are the thoughts that are surrounding them? Like, where is it stemming from? If it's stemming from some kind of comparison to somebody else, get yourself off social media for like 3 days. Don't be on social media if you're being hard on yourself. Comparison syndrome is a terrible thing. Unfollow people, right? And when you feel that negative feeling, what if instead of just dismissing it and trying to like get rid of it and like feel happy all of a sudden, you sit in it and think about why you're feeling that way, right? Go back to the thought of, where did this feeling stem from? Where did this feeling of, I was going to say despair, that sounded like really dramatic, but listen, once a month or so, I get in that like feeling of despair of like just being really hard on myself of like, the world is ending. I'm the worst. Who wants to do this with me? No one wants to join my challenge groups. I'm a terrible coach. Like, believe me, those thoughts cross my mind all the time. And I have to stop them and think, why? Where is this coming from? Because I know I'm a really good coach. I know that I'm showing up how I need to. I know I'm doing all of the things. But when I sit in them and I think about it, it's usually stemming from something else that has nothing to do with the thought I'm telling myself. So while you're sitting in them, maybe you can't turn them into a positive thought, but maybe you can turn them into a neutral thought, right? Maybe you can turn them into something that's like, well, that's what it is, right? This is maybe one of my most favorite Brene Brown quotes ever, is one day you will tell the story of how you overcame what you went through, and it will be someone else's survival guide. It's hard going through hard things. Life is hard. Life is not easy, ever. Like, there's something you wish you knew before you became an adult, right? One day you will tell the story of how you overcame what you went through, and it will become someone else's survival guide. If you have children, I think about that because I have children. I think about, I have 2 of my own 4 stepchildren that are watching me handle situation after situation after situation. And I think, how are they watching me and how am I showing up to be better for them? How can I show up better for me that they see as how they should show up the next time, how they should show up at 35 when everyone gets locked inside their houses for a year and a half, right? Like, how are you showing up for other people to see you and inspire them? Somebody's watching, right? Like, somebody's always watching. We hear that. That is all I have for you guys. I know this was like a really short call, but I challenge you, when you're going through something, screenshot this and go back and think, okay, if I had a goal and I missed the goal, what did I do, or what did I not do? How could I have shown up differently? And I back up and think, well, why didn't I? What was I feeling? Was I not motivated? Was I super busy? Was I super anxious for whatever reason? What was stopping me? Or what was I telling myself? What was I hearing other people say? Or what was I letting other people do, or what was I hearing around me that I started believing? Does that ever happen? Right? Like you're all gung ho about something, you're so excited, and then somebody out there is bringing you down because how dare you be excited or happy? That happens way too often. Know your thoughts, live in your thoughts, trust your feelings, know that your feelings lead to your actions and they give you the results, hopefully that you want. Hopefully that you want. But it all starts with our thoughts. All of it starts with our thoughts. So be so careful what you tell yourself every day. That was all I had for you guys. Did you guys have anything to add or any questions or anything? Okay. Okay, awesome. Well, that was it. Have a good night, you guys. If you are on my team, I will see you on our team pages. Otherwise, I will see you on the internet.